Namaste, good morning and good evening, wherever you are logging in from. Greetings. This is an evening show today, and this is your host, Anshuman Tiwari, on your show, Manage Better. Right? As you know, this show is all about how can we get better at anything that we are doing, primarily at work, and how can we learn new skills and new tricks and uh, improve our game. This is a world of upskilling. All of us are trying to get better at what we can do, and this series that I do on Manage Better is more in that spirit. And thank you so much for your love and affection and patronage over the last 2 years. This is our 40th show in this series, and I do another series on quality, which is into its 16th shows. So most of them live. It's fascinating to be able to bring to you speakers and authors and coaches and really people who've done that themselves and can speak from experience, right? So with that, we will kick on the show, but I first need to know who all are live. So I can see people are live on LinkedIn and YouTube. If somebody is live on Twitter as well, let me know. Certainly, um, Rohit, you were asking for a link while you are in the show. So this seems odd, but if you check my profile, you will be able to see the link. And thanks, Biniti, for sharing the link. Anybody else having any problem, do let us know. Some, you know, colleagues on the show can help you out. So once again, welcome to the show. We have a very special guest today. I've been wanting to have this person on the show for a while, and of course, I try and bring people to you who are difficult to get. So why get people who are easy to land? Because the difficult ones always give the best lessons. So in that spirit, I bring to you Abhijit Bhaduri. Those who are on LinkedIn, this name should not be new name at all. So in many ways, Abhijit is the OG of LinkedIn influencers. He was popular on LinkedIn before being popular on LinkedIn became popular. So you can see him in that way. And I and many others like me learned the early skills of how to write and continue to learn from him. And the common themes around what he does is, of course, writing and sketching, right? And I am able to say all this while he's not in the live stream because I might get nervous when he's around. So I'll leave you with that. But every guest deserves an introduction, even though Abhijit doesn't. But so I will share a little bit around Abhijit, and thank you everyone who's joining and wishing each other. Thanks a lot. So a little bit about Abhijit. Abhijit is, of course, a strategic advisor and to business leaders, organizations across the world, mostly in transition and in difficult HR situations. So he's cut his teeth mostly in HR and evolved from that. Executive coach to leaders on building a culture across the company to attract good talent. And he's rated consistently amongst the top 10 learning experts globally. So I will read this out again. Rated among the top 10 learning experts globally. Right? Clients ranging from Fortune 100 to startups to Indian organization, and he was amongst the original LinkedIn top voices when the program was launched some years ago. Many feathers, including described by Forbes magazine as one of India's most interesting globalists, voted number one HR influencer on social media, and author of two books. I believe there is a third book as well now, which we will check with him. But on the advisory board of program for chief learning officers, which is run by University of Pennsylvania, and member of governing council of MICA, and distinguished alumnus of XLRI, and many other. His writings are featured in Economic Times, Times of India, Business Line, People's Matters. You can't pick a magazine which has an article or a theme around HR, and Abhijit is not featured there. Um, but hi, Abhijit.
Hi.
Well,
Thank you so much for having me here.
I have saved one part of the introduction so for when you are live on the show. All this stuff that I told you, friends, is not the reason why Abhijit is here. Right. So Abhijit, of course, is a HR professional of highest order globally, and has worked with some of the leading companies, including in India and abroad. But the reason he is here is because his writings and sketches on LinkedIn have given inspiration to many, including me. And so we are here today to learn from him and the why, what, and how of writing and sketching, drawing on LinkedIn for influence. Of course, we all do that for influence, so that our influence in general, we have a voice. We want to take that voice to other people, which is what we are here for. So that's the reason Abhijit is here. Once again, welcome Abhijit, and any opening comments from you?
Thank you so much. I think that when you structure it like this, I'm a very unstructured person. So when you talk about why, what, how, I get very nervous that about, why do I do this? What do I do? How do I do this? For me to deconstruct something, in many ways, one of the challenges of this whole bit about learning something yourself is that when you try to deconstruct something, until and unless you are really, really, really good at something, it's very hard to deconstruct. So I struggle with this deconstruction because I'm also trying to get there myself and trying to improve my craft. So really hard for me to say this is how you should do it. I'm not an expert. I'm a fellow traveler like you, and it's a privilege for me to be on another LinkedIn creators show. So thank you.
Thank you, Abhijit. Nice of you. And don't worry, the structure part is because of my being a quality professional, so I have to bring some structure. And but we will, as discussed earlier, we this is an unscripted show, unscripted as you can get. So we will of course take questions from the audience as well. And there are people like Binati who are ready with the notepad to take notes as well. So Binati, all power to you. And okay, so with that, we'll get into the show, Abhijit. And I had promised the audience that we will get into, writing and sketching for influence, right? So that
Okay.
is the broad, uh, I would say, premise of the show. And I would like to delve into a little bit that we all have been. So now I am a little more active than maybe 2 years ago, and you were active earlier, and you continue to stay active. There are many others in the show who are. But why did you start writing and drawing or sketching on LinkedIn? What was your why when you started? Not now, when you started, and which was a few years ago. Uh, and what would drive you to do that?
Um, Actually, that's a great question. It sort of brings me back to a moment long back. I used to be working for Wipro as the chief learning officer, and what actually happened was I was trying to figure out uh, how do I take my sort of ideas to people and get them curious. Because most of the times when you're trying to learn something, the real magic lies in making people curious. If you get them curious, they'll always learn. So that was the original premise. So what I used to do is every Monday morning at 9 a.m. India time, I used to send out a small summary of something that I had read. I mean, and summary was like maybe 100 words or so. And I used to create a little sketch and then put that down there. My sketch notes. I'll try and summarize an entire book or a key concept in that one sketch. And I
Mhm.
started to do that. And, so a lot of people said that, why don't you, put it on LinkedIn? Because as they would leave the organization, they would say, I'd love to keep in touch with you and continue reading what you are writing. So then I started to also occasionally post some of these on LinkedIn, and suddenly it sort of I think people found it useful. So some people started to read it and comment on it and share it, and that's how I just thought that okay, this is something people find of value, so I would do that. I love reading and I love drawing, so this is just a combination of what I do naturally, and that's how I take notes. Though when I post it on LinkedIn, I'll add a little color, I'll do a little neater handwriting and all that. Yes, that's true. My own notebook is not always as neat and as structured as it seems there. But yeah, I mean, I usually try to use sketch notes because that's a very powerful way in which you can recall something that you've read. I mean, we read so much. Text is hard to recall, but if you see a picture, you can recall. Which is the reason why, if you think about it, you go back and watch a movie that you watch Sholay or some other movie that you've seen decades back, you will still be able to recall everything. So as something comes on, you can, this is the next scene, this is the next song, this is the next thing that happens. That's the magic of the visual. So I really started to leverage this. And I think when people sort of appreciate and encourage you, as people are very generous and they do that, I think you feel encouraged to do something a little bit more, and then you try and experiment. So I think that's what it was.
Thank you for a very candid one. And somebody has already branded this the Finman technique on steroids. So thank you, Binati. I'm sure we had not thought of this. So what struck me as you were speaking, Abhijit, and everybody, I like to attract your attention to, Abhijit's Twitter handle is mentioned on his image. Just make sure that there is no space between Abhijit and Bhaduri.
Yeah.
This is how the text appears on LinkedIn. Just that, so in case you want to follow him on other platforms other than LinkedIn, you can do that. But what I was saying, Abhijit, is that I've spoken particularly in the last year with that I've been part of a creator program, and my reach also has expanded across to other people who create on LinkedIn. And I found that whether they are at 2,000 followers or like at 800,000 like you, the why is pretty similar. The why is pretty similar. Of course, it's a journey. I'm sure you were at 2,000 at some point and you grew to more. We'll talk about that. But the why is very similar, and that strikes me as a very important life lesson that if you are going for this journey for the 800,000 or a million, that's not your why. Your why is, like Abhijit said, he had the desire to share. And that's what I hear from many other creators, that we just like sharing, and this is the format we like. Like some people enjoy these days making short videos, like a 1 minute video, and that's good for them. It's their medium. And there can be multiple mediums. So that was
Yeah,
a good start.
I think what you mentioned, Anshuman, you have to find the medium that you like. Drawing is what I like. Somebody else could do videos, or somebody else can just write, and somebody else can speak live. And I mean, you're so good at this. So you do what comes naturally to you. And then as you do it, you become better and better. I also think that this is one of those things you have to do it in order to uh, improve. There's no concept that you create the perfect product and then appear online. It never happens like that. No matter where you start, you may think you've reached perfection when you start, but it'll evolve because audience feedback, and you try out something and you think there's a better way to do it, and that continuous exploration is really how you continue to grow as a creator. So who knows it better than you?
No, no. I am only starting out. So, but yes, the last year journey has taught me many of the lessons that you summarized in your opening remarks. It is uncannily similar. We may not be, wielding the influence that you have today, but the like it is a journey for everybody. And like I said, you were at an early stage at some point, but the whys were similar and actually same. So good to hear that. Gives us some confidence and hope that one day we can also get there. Um, so that was your why. The obvious question to me, at least, and I hope others also in the audience want to know, is that you discovered your why. Serendipity, accident, you know divine interference, or whatever you can call it, and or maybe just practicing what you liked. without thinking too much. And maybe in that days, the word creator was not also around because you started a few years ago. But today, if somebody was to try and discover their why, what will your advice be to that somebody, people in the show, people like me, people who are just starting out, any of this kind? So if we are trying to discover our why, how should we go about it, or any advice to people like us?
Oh gosh, I'm like really. I get worried when somebody says advice because I am not in that place where I can give advice, because advice comes from people who have already cracked the secret code. There's no such thing, but I
We will
can tell you.
cancel the word advice and
Okay.
replace it with the guidance or
Yeah, but
something.
no, what I learn in terms of to discover your why. I think I don't know, I would just sort of really say that what is it that you would do if you had no followers? What is it that you would do, if you didn't get paid? What is it that you would do 7 days a week, 365 days a year? Um, that I think is your why. Now, and the reason why I say it is, follower counts will keep changing because the platform keeps changing its algorithm and this and that. One day you add 1,000 people and the next day you lose 5,000 people and all. So you can't let the external factors really guide you, because if you do that, uh, your why moves outside of you. So what happens is then you are driven by the desire to increase your follower count, and you kind of really start going away from it. It's a little bit like saying that, think about maybe a theater actor or a film actor who does one film and it works really well. Then you do another 30 films which are exactly the same copy of what the person did, and that
Hmm.
is actually, then suddenly people say, that person does exactly the same thing. So precisely the thing that attracts people to you is what takes away from you. So I don't think you should be looking at this whole business of follow accounts, etc., because this is a factor of the algorithm. Some days it works in your favor and some days it doesn't. But I think if you really want to stick to the whole thing of enjoyment, what do you enjoy doing? For me, when I read something, I love to draw,
Hmm.
and sort of create that image in my mind, so I don't need to go back to a book again. I can just simply, even now when I go back to any of the old sketch notes, the entire article or whatever I've tried to summarize comes alive. So for me, that is really the most powerful way in which you create. So I would really think that that's how I have looked at it, that I would do this any which way because that's the only way that I read. um, and even otherwise, when I sort of am at a conference, I'll doodle and I take notes and I'll do that. Yeah, I mean, I'll add a little sketch note, or I'll put a little color to it with a marker. That's a cosmetic shift. Otherwise, this is how it makes sense to me. So if it makes sense to you, then as you share it, that is the other part of it, that you share it for the other person, not because of what it does to you. So the follow count is what it does to you, but you share it because it makes sense to somebody else. Then it's of value. Then you say, okay, what if the person doesn't have access to this book? How do I make sure that the person can get the big idea that really resonated with me? How do I do that? Then I think that's really what I love to do.
No, totally makes sense. And I was brooding a little bit while you were talking because I was asking if I had asked this question to myself. I'm asking this royally sitting, enjoying and asking you this question. But what if this question was asked to me?
Yeah.
And
What would be your answer?
I was struggling, but I discovered as you were talking, particularly for these live sessions that I do, which I think have become a little bit of, people recognize now me for these live sessions, and I'm grateful for that. But this is not how it started. It started more because two reasons. One was, of course, I did realize that I had access to people maybe through experience and maybe through my networking efforts earlier, I had access to people where many other people may not have access to these people, right?
Right.
Not everybody is trying to network, not everybody is trying to reach out to people. I had done that, and I had access, like to yourself for some years, and others, and some were uh, you know really out of reach. Like Dr. Oleg Konovlov is based out of Moscow, and hardly anybody would have fan following in here. But he's fantastic. So I said, my job, therefore, the how I can serve people is to bring these people to the larger mass and have a dialogue and bring their message here, and that's my purpose. I of course stumbled upon it. It took me 2 3 or maybe more rounds to do that. That's how it started. And the other of course was that I was finding editing very tedious, and I said, look, I think I can manage this live thing better than the editing thing. So those two, one are more serious, one the other were a little more light, but both true. So you helped me rediscover my own why and purpose. So what we will, of course, the and it started raining, Abhijit, in your old city of Bangalore, heavy rains. So if you hear a lot of pitter patter, then you know where it is coming from. So
No, I can't hear anything, but yes, I am sure, and I miss Bangalore for that's for sure. So,
yeah,
you
so
know,
back to this. The lesson for all of us in the audience, and for me as well, was that how to discover your why, which is where this conversation last 5 minutes started. Is that do something, enjoy it, do more of it, and you will get to your why. If you are forcing yourself to get to your why, you might never get to it. Like Abhijit said, he already enjoyed doodling in conferences, over the week, reading a book, and it was a natural extension. And if it became popular, it became popular. Had Abhijit changed anything had he not become popular? Certainly not. He would still be doodling when he was at a conference. He would still be making sketch notes, uh, and enjoying that process. And I'm speaking on his behalf, but but I suspect it is true. Hmm?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's also the same thing that happens, when you choose your career.
Correct.
You don't necessarily have, and your reason for choosing a career can be very fuzzy. At least in my case, it was, nobody in my entire family or in my known circle had anything to do with HR, and talent management or anything of that sort. It was just completely alien concept. And I think where you start, what you begin to see when you are, at the early stages of your career is different from what you see a little further down in the journey. So thinking of it like a, long distance journey as you go, in the train where you start, you may be seeing a very different platform, and then you come across many different views. Sometimes there's a mountain, sometimes there's a stream, and as you go through your destination, it begins to look very different. So I think all skills are really like that.
Yeah, I mean, everything. Yeah, correct. It's a very deep point, but come to think of it, everything is like this.
Yeah,
We don't. I'm a quality professional, but I didn't. When I was, like in high school or something, I wasn't dreaming of becoming a quality professional. It happened,
precisely.
and it happened, and it is a series of accidents that lead to discovering what you want to do.
Yeah,
Good.
yeah,
So we've started having some questions, Abhijit. But what I'll do is that I'll ask one more question from my prepared list, and which is not a surprise because I theme all my shows on why, what, and how. So it's a simple one for my audience. But to the audience as well, what I can say is that you can start pouring in your and questions, and we will take it up in a few minutes, maybe 5 10 minutes or so, and we'll certainly try and cover as many as we can. So okay. There are quite a few questions pouring in now, just like the rain. But I'll move to the next topic that I wanted to explore your thoughts, Abhijit, on, and
sure.
I'll take you back a little bit when you started out, and you already mentioned how you started out, so that's fine. That we understand now. But what were you writing when you started initially or sketching, and has that changed today? Has anything changed today in the last few months or years over your journey? And if it has, how has it changed?
I think, as I said, that this entire thing evolves. So I would read a book and sort of summarize that. Then I also thought that, when I would write out an article, I would summarize that. Later on, I thought if I watch a video, I could summarize that. Then I tried that with a podcast. I would summarize that. And, I would draw out everything. Later on, when I started to write my books even earlier, I was when I wrote fiction, so my first book of fiction, Mediocre but Arrogant, when I did that, I mean, that I illustrated with a couple of little, it was actually like, the sketches that we do at the back of the notebook in college. So it was that style. And that sort of got a lot of traction. That I think evolved in retrospect. I think that's what evolved into the sketch notes. Um, when I started to write nonfiction, so when I wrote the Digital Tsunami, I used that to illustrate some of the ideas which I was writing about. Then in the next book, Dreamers and Unicorns, I used it to, a lot of times in books and articles, you give a reference. You say that, okay,
Mm.
this is the reference of the book. Instead of giving a reference, which is, a whole page or whatever, a paragraph or something, I took that concept and illustrated it with a sketch note. So I tried creating sketch notes out of references. So you don't need to read the full book because it's very inconvenient. You say that, oh, this is where I sort of learned about it. And you put a hyperlink. Sometimes people don't want to continuously keep going to the hyperlink. You put the idea there that, okay, why did you quote it? So it evolves. You try and do different things. It's really like learning to drive on different kinds of roads. Sometimes you drive in a marketplace, which is crowded,
Mm.
or sometimes you drive, up a hill, which is different. So it was really like that. So I keep trying out different aspects.
So what I gather is that, the core hasn't changed. Of course, the writing in form of sketching is your core medium of reaching out or expressing. That hasn't changed, but the aspects like, using even references or for books or for articles for multiple things. So the that has expanded, right? So like, and I like the driving analogy because, once you know driving and you go to
Exactly.
different places, you can adapt, because you know the core skill and you can adapt to the place. Of course, there are places in India where I would hate to hate to learn adapt driving, but yeah. So I get that, and I think that was also a question. So we've covered that a little bit. There are quite a few questions, Abhijit, around tools that you use. So we will get to that because I think that's also important. While the why and what is important, we'll also get to that. There is one question which while researching for this show, and I spoke to a few friends of mine who also know you. So we were debating one question which is quite well debated in our kind of circles who are budding creators or whatever name we can give us, is that is it better to write on a wide range of topics which can be loosely termed generalist, right? Or is it better to write on a specific topic which can loosely be called a niche topic? So I'm not equating the terms, but saying that generally, if you write on a range of topics, wide variety, you might be termed as a generalist. And if you write on a specific topic, you might be termed as a niche topic. For example, if somebody writes primarily for early career professionals, they can be called a niche, content creator.
Correct.
And if generally people write about all things work life, that is also a niche within the universe of topics, but it's a much wider this thing. Any any advice to such people who might be exploring this dilemma that, stuck between this and this, and what could be selected and how they could select one to go forward? Or one is not required at all, they can do both.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's an interesting question. It's a little bit like saying that when you decide to, embark on your career, what do you want to be? Do you want to be a specialist or a generalist? And I think this distinction, is not there. In my mind, there's only one criteria, at least I like to use, is you write about something, at least I try to do that, is something that I've researched over a span of time. It's not a one trigger that somebody says that,
And I
you know,
think
yeah, because that's where you tend to be shallow. Yeah. So I would say that I would love to write about something which I care about and which I have researched and I have spoken to people. I have my own point of view. And then I synthesize all of that and put it together. Now, if you are able to do it for multiple topics, so be it. But if you think that, okay, it's really something, it's a little bit like when you go to a restaurant. Some people like to go for a buffet because they say, okay, in that same amount of money I'll get to eat 50 things. Possible. And there are some people who will say, you know what, I effectively like to have only that dark chocolate. Like me, I always like to have something which is sweet, so I will always gravitate towards that. Should you start with the dark chocolate when you have a meal? Some people do, and I have done it myself. To the question that what would you write about? Something where your point of view is original and something that you can really passionately talk about. And what you write is not the entire width and depth and breadth of your knowledge. Which means
Hmm.
tomorrow, if somebody asks you five more questions about that, you should be able to sort of really talk about that. That's a good indication that now you can write about something like that. So now you try and narrow focus the entire thing and say, what's the big idea that I'm trying to make in this particular article? So if you see the newsletters that I do, you know,
Correct.
a lot of times uh, LinkedIn has a fantastic option that you can create a short post. Yeah, so
Hmm.
sometimes you create a short post which has just a few lines, and you can illustrate it with a sketch like what I try to do. Then it also has a newsletter. So when I look at when I've researched enough, the trigger may have been the short post. I will ask a few questions through a poll, then I get what people are saying. This is what I've read, this is what people are saying, and that in turn becomes like the newsletter article. um, and then once if you see that the newsletter article sometimes becomes the trigger for the book.
Hmm.
So, it is because in trying to read and write about each one of them, I've read about a whole bunch of related aspects to it. And if I've done enough for it to be a newsletter article with a lot of links, that's what I would do. If it is something that has enough depth to be a book, then I'll pitch that book to a publisher. And, if they say yes, then, so Dreamers and Unicorns was a newsletter post. If you sort of go back and look at that, many of the ideas which I have written about in the book actually first appeared either as a single post on LinkedIn or on Twitter, and then it became a newsletter, and then later on it became a book. In the same way, now, for example, I'm writing a book about Career 3.0. The central idea is something that I wrote about first on a post. Then, if you go for my newsletter, you will discover what that Career 3.0 means. And now it
Hmm.
is a book because, Penguin is going to be publishing that. So I'm really doing that. So that's how I think it evolves. Very long answer, I think. I should have
No,
given
no,
an answer.
no, no. I'm sure it is thrilling for the audience, but Abhijit, I see certainly a theme in everything that we've been speaking about more than half an hour now. That start and it evolves. I think that is a common theme across everything that you do. We know you, or many know you. I know you from a little earlier, but many know you from the, you know, LinkedIn influencer, top voice, 800,000, all that. But I said this earlier, I'll say this again for all our audience. Abhijit also started with zero, and
True.
zero became 10 and 100, and then it kept adding, but he kept at what he was doing, and what he was good at. He had discovered that, and of course, then once you are in that T format, you have deep knowledge in one area, and you can expand the knowledge and take it, which I call explain it as a T, this thing, and many people do. So that he's been doing, and it has evolved and kept learning from what has happened. And the last part I loved this, that something that could have started as a short post became either a newsletter. Something that might have started as a newsletter could have become a longer post, or a newsletter again, or a book eventually also. And that is fascinating, because I had not seen it that way. And it certainly opens a lot of doors. Who knows, I might be writing one book.
That's it. And you have to share 50% of the royalty with me.
If I get any money, then sure, you there is no money in book writing, but we do
You're
it
not
for the.
supposed to share that secret.
Oh yeah, yeah. So okay, no, no, no. Last 1 minute has been cancelled. We will delete this. But so lots of uh, love coming your way, Abhijit.
Thank you. Thank you
And
so
um,
much.
and
Varsha, thank you. Binati, I appreciate your saying this. Thank you.
so let's try and take some. There is Saraswati whose message
Yes,
quite.
absolutely.
Um, Vivek and Binati are part of the LinkedIn Creator Program along with me.
Hey,
Varsha,
Vivek.
whose comment I posted earlier. So quite a few, you can say alumni.
Yes,
From here.
absolutely.
Uh, so Varsha has a question, which I believe, Varsha, we have answered a little bit, but anything you want to add to this, Abhijit? As you mentioned, Anshul, finding your why, what's the easy way out? Any tips? So I'm the wrong person for tips and tricks. Abhijit can try. So any
Oh,
any
no,
anything?
I think, finding your why is a process of discovery, So I think I would say that you read something and it really resonates with you and it makes you really want to share something. Um, and then you kind of do that. And then I think through this whole process, for me, that is how my why evolved. That, I would sort of do that. And it is true that occasionally you would sort of say something and five more people say, yeah, I also agree with it. It's very nice. I just think that it's the temptation to get caught by follower count should not take away from this. I think that's the only thing I would just sort of say time and again, because then you are really focusing on yourself, but you are not worrying about whether it makes sense for the audience. So I think when you start to keep the audience in mind, it's really like companies which design great products,
Hmm.
do it for the consumer because they understand the consumer. And so they understand the consumer so well that they can create a product which even the consumer has not been able to articulate, but it's a need. So they've been able to find that need. So for me, the discovery was that in this world where there is no time, how do you make it easy for that person to read a book which it's a thick book and I love reading. So when I read it, I'll summarize it for myself. Then I thought, okay, if I'm summarizing for myself, that's a benefit to me. How do I make that available to others? It's really like letting somebody else read your diary. So
Hmm.
just put it there. And now today, it's a great time that we live in. You can put it on Twitter, Instagram. There's that everywhere. So for me, LinkedIn was the format of choice. So I started to post on LinkedIn. So when they started to open the newsletter, so I was one of the early people to start using it, and I would try the format. I tried audio on LinkedIn. Audio didn't resonate well with me, but video did. So I did a lot of video. I did 4 seasons of Dreamers and Unicorns, which was the show that I used to do, and I'll probably again go back and sort of start doing it again. But I think the format and it'll keep getting refined. You'll never have a crystallized diamond to begin with, where which is why I said the tips and all. They're a starting point. Eventually, you will discover your own path, and that is something that you evolve over time. at whichever point of time you stop, you will find that you've gone further than where you started. So that's the magic of this whole creative process.
Thanks, Abhijit. Vinati has made a note of your audience mindset. I think nice one here, uniquely pleasant. I can't see your name for some reason, but books from one lines. Thank you. There is
Thank you
one
very much,
slightly.
whoever you are. Thank you.
Yeah, for some reason it is showing names for others, but for one, but we'll figure that out later. Nita Luthria, slightly logistical question. Yes, the shows are, and this is why everybody, Nita has just asked this question. Nita and I are on the board of Kimpro Foundation. So, I know her a little bit why she's asking for this. So, you have fans, Abhijit. But Nita,
I
to
do.
you and
Thank you so much for being there, Nita.
to others as well. The show that the link that you use to get to the show is the same link for the recording, whether you came in on Twitter, LinkedIn, or YouTube, the same link. So, and you know me well. So, if you don't find the link, let me know. Um, okay, one couple of more questions. Uh,
Yeah,
hmm.
Vivek says that, hey, Abhijit, what you've done is what is also being done by Anshuman. So I can congratulate Anshuman in advance. Absolutely. I am sort of, doing it already. I'm sort of
This
saying that
is
it's a privilege for me to be on his show. So you are
this is
spot on
interesting,
with
Vivek. Vivek, I thought it was a question, man, but this is not done. I'll deal with you later. But I think what he's referring to, Abhijit, since I know Vivek and we've been on the same LinkedIn program for the last few months. It was a short creator accelerator program. I for the last about I think 10 months now. I started in December last year. I have almost every Monday. I have been summarizing a book in text. So sketching was not my cup of tea, but I liked writing, and it
yeah,
evolved. And with every passing week, although there is a pressure that every week I have to post about a book, and since I also read, there is never a shortage of. I might have read it earlier. I can bring it back in that kind of thing. I write, and that has grown. And there are people. One Monday I remember I missed, and there were 3 to 4 people who actually messaged me. 3, 4 may not be a big number for many, but for me it was like the world. So 3, 4 people missed my Monday post and actually asked for it.
yeah,
So I have, that's probably what Vivek is referring to. The Okay, moving on to some questions. There are some questions around tools, Abhijit. So we will
yeah.
get to that. And I'm trying to find now, just to make sure that I can get the person who asked that tool question. But before that, let's take this one. This one is a little I could locate, and I will locate the person who asked the question. Rasika Hivrekar, I hope I get your name, Rasika. How do you manage to be consistent, and could you give any tips on this? So you're notoriously consistent, Vijit, but what would you say about this?
Where, except for I think the last 2 months or so has been, lots of things I've just relocated to a different place and all that. I mean, so because of this, but otherwise, by and large, for me, it's, see, you can't do anything which is not naturally a part of you. So for me, I like to write early morning, so I wake up fairly early. I'm a really early bird. So I get up and write. And then, as I said, that, some days when I write something, I don't like it. So I don't publish it. But I write every day. And, then some days I'll get up and illustrate something. Then maybe I'll add the illustration and the writing and post it the next day. So I think the issue is, choose a frequency that works for you. Now, it can't be very rare, because then of course nobody knows when to expect that. It's like a friendship that you build. Imagine that you go to visit your friend every Monday, like Anshuman does. So then, if that's what it is, then on Monday evening or whatever time it is, I expect my friend to come in. So
Mm.
I've had friends like that who will drop in on that particular day of the week at that point of time. So I really know, I know what this person likes to eat, so I'll prepare it in advance. It's the same thing with the readership, that your reader knows that you're going to post something on Monday morning. So I would try to do that for my newsletter. I post it on a Monday morning, so that it's easy for people to read it at their convenience. They can do that, and it's all of these things. So you build your audience, and that's the equation you have with them. It is, again, as I said, it's not about your creating the content. It's about serving it so that it's convenient for the reader. So that's you're serving it to a friend, and
Correct.
that's the equation. It's truly like that. There are people who will remind me, and it's a lovely relationship. There are people who have been with me, for several years,
Mm.
and they care about me, so that they'll say that, oh, I understand that you're going to the city, let's meet up. So they are all strangers. I've met so many of them. When I go to that city, they'll stay in touch and they'll connect up. They wish me on my birthday, and they'll say that, oh, in that there's a typo, just fix it. So I'll go back and fix it. I mean, it's a
Mm.
beautiful relationship you build, whether it is with one person or a million. It's irrelevant, because it's just such a lovely relationship. Even one is gratifying enough. So that's
Absolutely.
how I look at it.
Yeah. So Rasika, I think you got more than what you asked for, more than tips. But the common thing, of course, is that find a frequency that works for you, and then try and maintain that. Obviously, there is a lot of pressure on many uh, aspiring creators or creators that you should write daily. Some people post 4 times a day. So
Wow.
there's no end to it. You might find people who are posting 5 6 times a day, but you might find people who post just once a week, and they have the similar influence. That it is all about what consistency you can bring, and can you maintain the quality of your work at that consistency is important, right? So if you can, then 5 times a day is fine, but if you can't, then find that uh, level of consistency. I found that question, Jatin Kapadia. PGMP means program manager, certified program manager. So good to see you, Jatin, and your question. Uh, Context to this question, of course, Abhijit, is that for writing we need a laptop or a phone or a tablet, and a keyboard, right?
Yeah.
And of course our creative process. Sketching is more than that. There
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
So what tools do you use in
Yeah.
the process?
Sure. So, I think for the greatest span of time, I have drawn on, plain paper and pen. I also like to paint. So, sometimes I do it on the handmade paper, and then I can use watercolors on it. So you will see sometimes there are watercolors. Um, Over a span of time, then I also thought that I challenge myself to do digital art. So then I bought myself an iPad, and then I started sketching on that. So I keep switching. For me, it is more to do with where I started doing it, where I started the concept. So if I started drawing it, I usually always will have either a piece of blank paper or a notebook next to me. When I read, write, do anything, it's always there on my table. It's a constant thing. I also have paper of all kinds next to me, so you'll find that my desk is cluttered with lots of these sketch pens and drawing pens and all that. So what happens is that whatever I start doing it with, I'll complete it with that. If it was started on a iPad, I'll complete it with that. If it's on a plain piece of paper, I'll complete with that. If it's through a watercolor, then I'll do it with that. So it's really around that. So yesterday, for example, I read about an actor who played Hagrid,
Hmm.
Rob Coltrane, who passed away.
Hmm.
And I was reading that, and I said that, gosh, that's sad. I mean, Hagrid was such a powerful character. So I, just drew it out, and I had just one colored marker there, and so it was just done with that. It's a dark red kind of a marker. And now, is that the way I would have ideally wanted to draw? No, I would have probably wanted to do it with a pencil or a ink or something. But that's what it was. That's what I drew with. So it's on Twitter. You can actually see it. It's perhaps also on Facebook. Yeah.
Sure. Thanks, Abhijit. So, Jatin, I hope you got your answer that it's firstly, it is not so much about the tools, but there, Abhijit did mention the tools. If you are into sketching, then obviously you need this, paper and different types of paper, and of course sketching and all. And he did mention digital art. So, um, one interesting one. Partly you did answer this, Abhijit, but Shiju Roy wants to know: have you ever encountered writer's block? How did you tackle the same, if you have any? Every day.
Every single day. You know, I will. So the short answer to your question is I encounter blocks often enough. Um, and that's the reason why, so there are two things that happen with me. I encounter the writer's block when I get no idea whatsoever. So if I get no idea to write, then I'll just draw. Sometimes you'll find that I'll just post a drawing, uh, you know, or a painting, and so so that's one part of it. Um, on a different note, I mean, I also think that I also have this whole problem that when I write something, I'll write something and I'll send it off, and especially with a book or something, I would have done the entire thing. I send it off, which is where I am now. I sent off the first draft. um, Actually, it was the second draft or third draft that I had done.
Mm,
I've sent it, and now the editor has come back with some edits, and now I have developed cold feet, and I said, "Oh God, this reads so terrible. I have to rewrite it." Now I've started rewriting that book. So
mm,
this is the fourth draft that I'm doing. I'm only on chapter 5, so it's quite miserable to have that. So you continuously want to refine it better, and then I read it and say, "Why did I even say this?" Then you rewrite it. I go back and say, "Why did I say this? Terrible." I go back and rewrite it. So this is a problem. So to complete something, you have to stop being a perfectionist and complete it. But if you complete it too soon, you've given up something which is half baked. So I think it's a balance. I don't know. I struggle with it. So I have no way of knowing what it is. Add to it the writer's block. It's a terrible thing.
absolutely. And I hope you got your answer. I just wanted to add a little bit that, since, text writing or long post is my regular, I struggle to do short posts. And maybe my struggle is to, well, I try and explain what I've said. And sometimes
Mm.
I realize that maybe that explanation is not required. People will get it. But, having been a trainer and, in by that, I try and explain. But over the last year, I've learned to kind of be crisper, and it also adds a little mystique and value to it, that if people are wondering what I meant, maybe in an advertising sense, I have delivered more value than if I had explained it fully, and leave the the what lesson they want to draw to them.
No,
But
I
what
think
I
you do it really well. I mean, so yeah, I've seen your
thanks,
posts are
Abhi.
really good. Yeah.
It's got better, but like you said, everything gets better with practice and conscious practice. You obviously don't blindly practice. You focus on a few things and they get better. And the writer's block thing is amazing concept, and the not worrying too much about perfectionism is also interesting, because there have been posts that I thought I had done my best, and I could not have written this any better, and they got 20 likes. so and hardly any movement. And then I think that if I'm happy. I know that I wrote it well, and there can be other posts, and this is for everybody in the audience. There can be other posts that you think that, oh, this could have been a far better post, but under time pressure, or under you have many other things to do, you let it go, and that becomes quote unquote viral or something. So that will also happen, but there is a balance, like Abhijit said, in trying to get something out of the door, and also to make sure that it, since it has your signature on it, it should be of a certain quality that people expect from you. So that balance is very difficult to achieve, and everybody, including Abhijit, who's far ahead in this journey, and people like me who are aspiring, all of us have the same struggle. So the struggle is real and same for everybody.
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
um, Rasika has put a comment. Thank you, Rasika. Both of us. Uh,
Thank
Mukul,
you,
who
Ras. Thank you.
Mukul is has been in the learning and development field for many years with several
Yes.
companies. So yeah, thank you, Mukul.
Thank you, Mukul.
And quite a few other questions, but I think some of the questions were related to the how part, which we just covered. So, but let's take this one as well. Do you advise social media directly or for posting, or follow it as a blog post in blogging sites and give links to social media? Oh, this is very specific, very, very specific, Sinjo. So I'm not too
So,
sure.
so I'll try and respond to what I think. I'm not sure I've understood the exact import of the question, but I'll try and respond to what I think you're asking, at least how I've comprehended it. I when you it depends on the platform. For example, Twitter. When I've read something and I think it is something of value to others, it evoked a reaction, then I will share that on Twitter directly. So Twitter is more of a spontaneous kind
Hmm.
of a platform. Whereas, when I do a LinkedIn post, the act of writing and illustrating itself puts a time gap between the time that I thought I'm going to share and when I actually end up sharing.
Correct.
Take it another step further. So let's say if you do the newsletter, if you see my newsletter on LinkedIn, I will really research a topic enough. So therefore, sometimes a topic can take 3 or 4 weeks to be able to, research and write something on it. So it takes time. So one of the ways to do it is that you have multiple things. You are cooking multiple posts in parallel at
Hmm.
different stages of preparation. So as it gets ready, it comes onto the feed. Whereas if you are doing something like the LinkedIn Live that Anshuman is doing, and this is something that it takes a long time to plan. You got to coordinate. You sort of find the timing, and the timing is fixed, and it doesn't work for someone. So there is a lot more behind the scenes. So I
Yeah.
think the way to look at it is, as far as the audience is concerned, it's like when you go to watch a movie, you don't really care whether it was, it took 1 day to make or 1 year to make or 15 years to make. It doesn't matter. If the story appeals to you, that's what you go to see. So I think the audience has plenty of choice, so whether you spend 1 day or 1 year writing that, they don't really care as long as they got some value out of it. So, which is why I keep saying that I think social media really teaches you to focus on somebody else. It really builds that mindset, and I've been a big beneficiary of that. That it
Hmm.
sort of teaches you to really start thinking about your audience and stop thinking about yourself. As I said, that you're saying that, my God, I mean, that was such a clever thing I said. Look, if the audience didn't find any value, it doesn't matter whether it was good or bad. There are so many great writers who are Nobel laureates you have not read. So it
Hmm.
doesn't matter whether the person is a Nobel laureate or not. As far as I'm concerned, I have not read that person. So it's really like that.
No, thanks, Sinjo. So I hope you had your answer. Many comments coming in, but I don't want to let you go, Abhijit, without sharing what are you reading now, and if there is any book you can, or any resource, why book, any resource you can recommend for our audience to get better at writing, or any how to express, because you sketch, the others do videos, and generally how to express. So two questions: what are you reading now, and what can you recommend for us?
So, I kind of read different books in parallel. So at any given point of time, the moment I finish reading something, you will see it on LinkedIn. Especially if I've liked it, then I'll put it on, recommend it to others. Because what I don't do is, if I've read a book and I thought it was no good, I will not waste your time, writing a long article why it was not good, because then I shouldn't have written it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So whatever I have read, which I've liked, I have sort of shared there. What I try to do is I find myself listening to a lot of uh, podcasts now.
Mm.
So I do enjoy sort of listening to podcasts, and there are some which I particularly enjoy and recommend. Amit Verma's podcast, uh, The Seen and the Unseen, is one of my favorites. I've enjoyed listening to that. Um, the other podcast which I really like is, it is this called the Happiness Project, which so I've sort of enjoyed listening to that.
Gretchen Rubin. Yeah.
Yeah, so there are quite a few of those. Then I do listen to a lot of things on business news, so that's what it is. Um, I like, sometimes and right now I'm trying to finish the fourth draft of my book. So my media consumption has reduced, because it's a you have to choose. You can either consume media to feed your senses, or you can write, and then it's sort of all those different ideas have to converge together into one sentence. So that is an infinitely tough task. So when you start writing, I find that my media consumption just drops to zero, because if I don't, then I can't write, because I'm constantly thinking of five other ideas I should have added. Oh my, maybe I can add this, maybe I can add that, and it reads terrible after that. So I have to sit down, focus, and say, this is what I'm writing, this is what I'm doing, I'm not doing anything else. So it's
Fantastic.
just that.
So yeah, so of course we've caught you at a time when you are writing your book. So I will let you go on that answer. Maybe another day we will.
No. I mean, I love doing this. I mean, thank you so much. This has been such a privilege for me. So it's really like saying you've introduced me to your friends, and they'll hopefully become my friends also. So
Absolutely. That's one of the reasons why I said that's how I discovered my why as well. That I could bring the two together, and I, last week I was with an executive coach MCC, who's one of the top coaches in India, Shweta Handa, and I did say that this is like I'm getting private tuition,
yeah,
but the doors and windows of the classroom are open, so people can come in and watch, and occasionally they can even ask a question. And so what better learning can be there? So I'm truly privileged. Thank you, Abhijit. And there are a lot questions and comments still coming in, but we are up on time, so I, being a quality professional, I will not take too much of your time. I will close the show, but we always close the show with the announcement of the next one. So the next one, I try to. The next one, which is scheduled, is on the quality series, which is on 29th, Saturday, 11 a.m. regular time. We'll be back with Govind Ramu, and no, this time it is Balaji Reddy, who is the founder of the Deming Forum of India. Govind we had earlier. So you will have that on 29th, and I will try and finalize something for 22nd if I can. So you will get that anyway soon. With that, thank you once again, Abhijit, for your generous time, and you took time away. This is early morning for you, so I'll let you go and do what you
no,
want to do with your
thank you.
day.
Thank you very much. And if you want to reach out to me, my email is Abhijit Bhaduri at live.com. And of course, on LinkedIn, if you follow me, you can drop me a DM, or on Twitter as well, which is at Abhijit Bhaduri. So please stay connected, and don't just remain a friend who I've met on a train and never met again. So please stay connected with me. Thank you. Thank you for
That's
having me here, Anshuman. It's such a privilege. Thank you.
my pleasure. Thank you very much, and thank you very much to the audience. Namaste and bye bye.
Bye bye.
I will end the broadcast.